Everybody, Jimmy Smith here with my picks for UFC 303. Pardon everything about this recording. I'm in a hotel room in Washington, D.C. I'm calling a world title fight for Pro Box TV. Lamont Roach Jr. defending his 130-pound title. So I'm doing some boxing stuff, so I'm on the road at the moment. So I'm filming this on my laptop in a hotel room. So pardon the audio, pardon everything. Did want to get the information out for you guys for UFC 303. Very interesting when I look at not just the fights, but the lines themselves, because a lot of this, as far as the main and co-main, thrown together at the last minute, and that's going to affect the way I see this fight, the main event and the co-main as well. But how you pick it's interesting because the lines are pretty close all the way around. So let's go with the main card. We start out with Ian Machado Gary, Michael Venom Page. I'm looking at DraftKings for the odds, and right now Ian Machado Gary minus 155, right? Pretty significant favorite. Michael Venom Page plus 130. The way I see this one is, called a lot of MVP's fights, one of his vulnerabilities is he tends to lean a lot on his lead foot. He tends to get really low and use his hands. Well, that requires a lead foot because he's very explosive, right? He's bouncing off his legs all the time. It requires him putting a lot of weight on his lead leg. Ian Machado Gary has a very good calf kick. Very good. Seen that in previous fights. He can just kick the hell out of that lead leg. Doesn't cost him anything. It's a very easy kick to throw, and he's just as tall, so he has a lot of range. I think that's going to be a problem for MVP in this fight. If you remember the Douglas Lima knockout, he knocked out MVP's lead leg and then uppercutted him. Boom. So I don't think it's going to a finish in this one. So I think Ian Machado Gary would be my pick because of that ability to kick out the lead leg and slow down Michael Venom Page and take some sting off that explosiveness that is a huge part of his game. The over-under to go over 2.5 rounds is minus 200, right? So you're not going to make a lot of money. I do think this goes over 2.5 rounds. I think this probably does go to decision unless somebody really gets clipped. Neither guy is a massive one-shot puncher. They both have the ability to do that. They don't do it in a ton of fights. And if you're going with Ian Machado Gary, he probably plays it safe, stays outside, uses a leg kick, probably wins a decision. So you're not going to make a ton of money, but I'm going with the over 2.5 rounds, and I'm going with Ian Machado Gary. Once again, both of those are favorites, so you're not going to make a ton of money. You might parlay both of them. Myra Bueno Silva versus Macy Chason. This is an interesting one for a lot of reasons. The odds, by the way, are exactly even, both minus 110 on DraftKings. So the over-under is 2.5 rounds. The over is minus 195. It's a big favorite to go the distance, which makes sense. Neither one is a great finisher. But it's when I look at the history of these fighters. Now, I called Macy Chason when she won the Ultimate Fighter 2018, and she's big, just a physical beast. She's got a lot of physical talent. She's tall, she's big, she's strong, a lot of range, she's really tall. And Myra Bueno Silva, of course, coming off the fight for the 135-pound title, she looked flat, to say the least, against Raquel Pennington. So there's the win that became a no contest over Holly Holm. Then there's the loss to Raquel Pennington. She just looked flat. She looked kind of disinterested. Her gas didn't hold up. She really faded late. That's not a good sign. And a lot of times when fighters have that title opportunity to come up short, next fight usually isn't great. Either they bounce back great or they just look like, man, I got all the way to the top and I didn't quite get there. Most of the time it's the latter, right? A lot of fighters just don't bounce back well from their first title loss. So I'm kind of betting on that when I look at Macy Chason. She's been up and down as well. The thing about the Irene Aldana fight, which was her last loss, which was 2 fights ago, she was losing initially, started coming back, right? In that third round, I was like, oh man, she might win this one. Fell for an up kick to the liver, which I've never seen in my life against Irene Aldana. Ended up folding her and she lost. So she's 2-2 in her last 4, but lost to Raquel Pennington, who's current champ. And then the Irene Aldana fight, she was starting to come back and win and then fell for the up kick. So I definitely see the potential here. Odds are exactly the same. I'm going with Macy Chason. Can't call it an upset because, once again, the odds are exactly the same. Over-under, I do think it goes over probably to decision, which, once again, you're not going to make any money on. It's minus 200, but my pick would be the over. I'm sorry, minus 195, whatever. My pick would be the over and would be Macy Chason in this fight. So, Anthony Smith, Roman Dolidze. I'm going to let you guys in on some stuff here. When I was working at SiriusXM, of course, I worked with Anthony Smith. And it was like a running joke that I always had to pick Anthony Smith. The problem is he let me down a lot during that run when I was at SiriusXM. So last time around, I picked him to lose, and he won, and he was pissed at me. Roman texted, he's like, you picked against me? I was like, yeah, well, congratulations, you won, even though I picked against you. So I don't know how pissed he actually was. But this one, the problem is Anthony Smith, one of the difficulties is he's a fighter's fighter, right? But he can make poor decisions because of that. He doesn't always fight to his strengths. And as he said before, openly, he's like, yeah, I can't deal with leg kicks. I'm just not good at dealing with them. And that has cost him in fights. Like little things have cost him in big fights before. But one thing is, he's a nice, physical, strong. I know he came up from middleweight, but he's light heavyweight size. He's a strong guy. Roman Dolidze coming up from 185 pounds. Roman Dolidze is not a knockout puncher, even at 185, and this is at light heavyweight. I think this is one of those where Anthony Smith can kind of, use his physical tools to win it. And Roman Dolidze is a slight favorite, minus 142 on DraftKings, which makes you, Anthony Smith a slight dog. I think that's worth an underdog pick. I really do. I think Anthony can maybe bully Roman Dolidze, make him his takedown, his top game. As long as he sticks to his wrestling and doesn't get in a firefight, and even if he does, I don't think Roman Dolidze is a knockout puncher. He might outstrike him a little bit, but he's not a knockout puncher at 185, and this is a 205. So I think this is one of those where all the elements come together to give Anthony Smith, as an underdog, a fighting chance in this one. So I'm going with Anthony Smith in a slight upset. The over is minus 115. The under is minus 115. So it's the same. Probably goes a little late. If it goes Anthony Smith's way, it's probably by decision, because we can only use his physicality and his ground game and his ground and pound, those long, that long game plan, right? You're game playing for a long fight. You don't want to go in there and get in a firefight necessarily, but you want to grind it out, make it about your natural size advantage. So I would go with the over, and I'd go with Anthony Smith. So I think the first three fights go long. That's how I see this one. But Anthony Smith in a slight upset over Roman Dolidze. Brian Ortega, Diego Lopes. I was really interested to see the odds on this one, and it's Diego Lopes minus 142, Brian Ortega plus 120. This is a last-minute fight, and it may seem counterintuitive here, but fighters who have more experience or a little bit older tend to do better in late-notice fights than young bucks. Now, you could say, well, the young guys have more energy, and they're younger, and yeah, but they tend to spend it inefficiently, right? An older anything is good at just pacing himself, is good at just doing what he has to do to get through and fighting like a professional and fighting like a veteran. That's Brian Ortega. So partly the late notice nature of this fight makes me favor Brian Ortega a little bit. But on the other side, Brian is one of those, he has taken beatings that take years off your career. And it started out with the Max Holloway fight, and I actually favored in that fight, and Max Holloway beat the dog piss out of him. Volkanovski beat the dog piss out of him. It isn't just a matter of winning and losing. He just takes those beatings that make you go, oh my God, you're never going to be the same guy after this. And then against Yair Rodriguez, he took a beating. He won, but in the beginning, he was just getting tattooed. And I was like, oh, it's going to, you only have so many of those in you. And he's taken 3 of them. So I just wonder that Brian Ortega has just taken too many and is starting to go down. It's just you can't keep doing that and be the same guy. Talking about going up to 155 pounds, all this other stuff. I think this is going to be, the thing is, if I'm Diego Lopes, I want to avoid a ground battle with this guy. Now, Brian Ortega has T-City, has an excellent triangle and outstanding submission game. So does Diego Lopes. But I don't want to get in the kind of fight that's going to favor a veteran. And you could wake Brian Ortega out of a coma and throw him on a mat, and he's going to, on instinct, do really well. He doesn't have to think about it that hard. He doesn't have to use, he doesn't have to use a lot of his energy, anything like that. He's going to love that. If I am Diego Lopes, I want to make this about my explosiveness, about my power. Does have an excellent knockout punch. And I think Brian Ortega, although I like him more in a late notice fight, this is one of those where, the young eat the old. That's how this sport works. And he said that publicly. He said, this is the old lion versus the young lion. 9 times out of 10, that works out for the young lion. So I like Brian Ortega because it's a late notice fight, because veterans tend to do better in those kinds of fights. But when I look at the physical power and what Brian Ortega has been through in recent fights, folks, it's a time bomb. You can just only take so many of those before you're suddenly off a cliff. And I'm kind of betting a little bit that this might be one of those. So I'm going with the younger 29-year-old Diego Lopes, who hasn't beaten anyone at the elite level. He's looked excellent in all his fights, of course. But back to the Mosar Evloev fight, which is his only loss in the UFC, and he still looked good in that one. But I do believe that too many factors are working against Brian Ortega in this one. So I'm going with the favorite on this one. I'm going with Diego Lopes. Under 2.5 rounds is -140. I think that's probably the way it goes. Brian Ortega is as hard as a coffin nail, but I believe that Diego Lopes, if you're going with Diego Lopes and you're going with the explosiveness and the power, probably gets it done before 2.5 rounds. I'm going with Diego Lopes. I'm going with the under on this one. First one, I'm not picking a long fight. Alex Pereira versus Jiri Prochazka. This one is so freaking tough. Why? Normally, fighters like Alex Pereira don't become champion. Guys who are specialists, essentially, don't become champion. When they do become champion, they don't have long runs. But he just seems to have a combination that seems to work, which is unreal power and kind of an ability to just get out of bad situations when he needs to. If you remember, Jiri Prochazka was winning this fight last time, right? And then ended up on the feet, took a shot, boom, and it was over. Now, you could say that it was stopped early. Jiri Prochazka didn't think so. I understood this. It was a little early for me, too, but, Pereira just has God-given power and the ability to make that power work. At 205 has always belonged to really well-rounded fighters. Some of the best fighters in UFC history were 205-pound champions. It's just, Randy Couture, Chuck Liddell, all the way back, Frank Shamrock, the first real mixed martial artist, was champ at what we called middleweight at the time, which is now light heavyweight. So he's one of the few that's a specialist who somehow makes it work. So the late notice nature of this. Number one, I don't know how badly Pereira was hurt when they gave him the call. I know he had a problem with some broken toes. I don't know where he is in terms of his recuperation and healing up before he got this call and able to get ready and have a full camp. I don't know. The fact that Prochazka was winning before, but Pereira was able to come back. The problem with Jiri Prochazka, if you're a fan of Jiri Prochazka, if you like him, he has this tendency to just string together a couple good minutes, give up his back, get out of it, create a scramble, get on top. He's a cardiac fighter. It's never like Jiri Prochazka's winning and he just consistently is ahead of somebody and, that's it. He just gives you a heart attack every single time he fights. The problem with his style versus a guy like Alex Pereira is Alex Pereira doesn't give you another opportunity. You stand up and you make a mistake, it is lights out, you're looking at the ceiling. So both fighters are short notice, so I don't give the advantage to anybody else. Jiri Prochazka, to anyone over anyone else. Jiri Prochazka is more well-rounded, but he just tends to make tactical mistakes. We saw him in the Glover Teixeira fight. He just gave up good position and had to beast his way out. He relies on his physicality and his ability to explode. And his stand-up style is real funky and weird, and it's not bad, but it leaves a lot of opportunities for a guy who just hits like he stole something from him. So I still go with Alex Pereira in this fight. I think his power is the difference against everyone. Jiri Prochazka just makes too many tactical mistakes. If Jiri Prochazka were just a bit more boring, I'd go with Jiri Prochazka. But he's just a guy who gets in these funky positions, doesn't hold somebody down, and is transitioning all the time. And in that storm, just like he did last time, you can get hit with a shot and it's all over. And Pereira just needs one. So I got to go with Alex Pereira. If you're going with Pereira, you're going by knockout. The over-under on this one is a round and a half. Jesus. Round and a half? Going with the over on that one. Let's say he gets him, at the end of round number 2. I don't think it's going to be that quick. So I got to go with the over on this one, which is -156 or something. And Alex Pereira, slight favorite at -142. So I'm going with Alex Pereira in the main event by knockout, going with the over. So there you have it. Those are my picks, UFC 303. Check out ProBox TV, Lamont Roach Jr. defending his title. I'll be calling that one against Fergal McQuarrie, undefeated Irishman. It's going to be a lot of fun. Anyway, I'll be back to own my picks next week. Appreciate you.